It's 2 a.m. You're just drifting off, and then out of nowhere, your whole body jerks awake, like you missed a step on a staircase that wasn't there. You didn't imagine it. It happens to almost everyone, and almost nobody asks why. Here's what's happening in that half second. Your brain mistakes the feeling of falling asleep for the feeling of falling out of a tree. It panics. It fires your muscles awake to catch a fall that was never coming. Scientists call it a hypnic jerk, but the name isn't the strange part. The timeline is the strange part. That reflex is older than language, older than fire, older than the idea of a bed. It was built for a world with branches, height, and real gravity to fear. Now here's the moment that should really stop you. Some researchers who study primate sleep have found similar startle patterns in other tree-dwelling species. That's one reason a few scientists suspect this reflex may stretch back millions of years to ancestors sleeping in branches, not beds. It's a debated theory, not a settled one, but if there's anything to it, some tiny piece of your nervous system still thinks you're 20 feet up in a tree tonight, right now, while you're reading this. So if one reflex is a fossil, still active after all this time, what else is? Turns out it's not just one thing, it's almost everything. Harvard evolutionary biologist Daniel Lieberman has spent decades mapping this exact mismatch. He calls environments like ours evolutionarily novel. Your body has no ancestral blueprint for anything like it. Picture a nightstand, dark room, a phone lighting up. Your heart rate spikes like a twig just snapped behind you. Now picture a grocery store aisle, glowing under fluorescent light, stacked with more sugar than any human in history ever saw in one place. Something ancient in you lights up like a siren. Your brain is running software built for a different planet. Most of the time, you don't even feel the lag. People usually say we're hardwired, end of story. But that's not the end. That's the opening scene.
Picture this. You're lying in the dark, phone screen lighting your face. Before you even read the words, your chest goes tight. That's not drama. That's your amygdala, the almond-shaped alarm center deep in your brain, treating a two-word text like a branch snapping in the dark. It can't tell a predator from a Slack notification. Psychologist Roy Baumeister spent years measuring just how lopsided this system is. His research, dating back to the 1900s, found bad experiences hit the brain 3 to 5 times harder than good ones of equal size. One harsh comment can outweigh a dozen compliments. Scientists call this negativity bias. Here's the twist. It's not a flaw. It's leftover math. One missed threat could end a life. One missed reward just meant a smaller lunch. Evolution made the obvious bet. Fear won, every time. Now, picture a candlelit cave tens of thousands of years ago, someone straining to hear the smallest sound outside. That instinct never left. It just moved indoors, into your bedroom, tonight, waiting on a delayed reply. Here's where it gets stranger. You can actually watch this bias move through your body. Cortisol, the same hormone that once readied your ancestors to sprint from a predator, floods your bloodstream over a typo in an email, a pause at dinner. Your heart doesn't know the threat is imaginary, it just runs. So if your alarm system is that old, how far back does the miscalibration reach? Does it stop at fear, or does it touch what you crave too? Further than you think, and it starts with something sweet.
Here's the assumption almost everyone makes, and it's wrong. People assume evolution built us to be happy, calm, balanced. It didn't. Evolution optimizes for one outcome only: survive long enough to reproduce. Happiness was never the job. Picture a band of 30 early humans moving across open grassland 300,000 years ago. No stored food, no safety net, just what they could carry, hunt, or find that day. British anthropologist Robin Dunbar's research on primate and human social groups suggests our brains are calibrated to track around 150 stable relationships, a number that keeps showing up across hunter-gatherer bands and even modern military units. That's the social world your brain was built for, not a phone with instant access to 8 billion strangers. Here's a twist most people don't expect. Archaeologists studying the 400,000-year-old Schoningen spears unearthed in Germany found something surprising. These weren't crude clubs, they were balanced, aerodynamically shaped hunting weapons, evidence that careful, long-term planning existed in our ancestors far earlier than scientists once assumed. Your brain wasn't just reacting to threats back then, it was already strategizing, plotting, thinking several steps ahead. That same forward planning machinery is still running in you, except now it's plotting your calendar instead of a hunt. Now watch what happens when that ancient, scarcity-built brain collides with total abundance. Ripe fruit and honey were rare for most of human history, worth real risk to obtain. Anthropological studies of the Hadza people of Tanzania, one of the last hunter-gatherer societies on Earth, describe foragers climbing dangerously high trees for wild honey because calories were never guaranteed. That instinct didn't disappear when supermarkets arrived. It just lost its context. Public health researchers now tie that exact mismatch to decades of rising obesity and type 2 diabetes across the U.S. The same reward circuit that once lit up for a hive of wild honey now lights up for something with 0 calories at all, a stranger's like on a photo. Same dopamine surge, wildly different trigger. If sugar and approval can hijack a 300,000-year-old system that easily, what does that say about fear? Fear is older, and it runs deeper still.
Here's a scene. You're walking through your backyard. A spider drops in front of your face, and you flinch before a single conscious thought forms. Now, the twist that should bother you. Car crashes kill roughly 40 times more Americans each year than venomous animals do, according to CDC data. Yet nobody's chest tightens climbing into a driver's seat. That's not logic. That's a body running an old threat map, drawn up long before cars existed. Nobel Prize-winning psychologists Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky spent years proving how skewed that map really is. They documented loss aversion. Losing something feels roughly twice as painful as gaining the same thing feels good. In a world of real scarcity, that math made sense. Losing your only food store could kill you. Once you know to look for that old map, its fingerprints show up everywhere, and each one tells its own small story. Picture a crowd, all eyes turning toward you. Public speaking consistently ranks among America's most common fears, and researchers trace it back to something older than embarrassment. In a small ancestral band, being cast out of the group often meant death. Now picture a rejection, a breakup, a friend going quiet. UCLA psychologist Naomi Eisenberger's fMRI studies found that social rejection activates the same brain regions as actual physical injury, meaning heartbreak isn't just a metaphor, your brain treats it like a wound. Now picture the edge of a glass observation deck, hundreds of feet up. Your stomach drops, even though the glass is solid, because for most of human history, height was one of the more survivable threats worth fearing hard. There's one more case that surprises people. Researchers studying the 3,300-year-old remains of Ötzi the Iceman, discovered frozen in the Alps in 1991, found an arrowhead lodged in his shoulder, evidence of a violent chase in his final hours. His body still carried the exact stress chemistry yours does right now, the same racing heart, the same flooding adrenaline, just for a real chase instead of a looming deadline. None of these fears are irrational, they just never got the update. And if your fears are fossils, still firing on schedule, what about the rest of you? What if this goes deeper than behavior, down into the cells your own children might inherit?
Here's the part almost nobody expects. This mismatch may not just live in your behavior, it may be written into your actual cells. Picture the Netherlands, winter of 1944. A brutal famine grips the country in the war's final months. Pregnant women eat almost nothing for months straight. Decades later, researchers studying their children found something unexpected: altered metabolic and stress-related markers, still measurable in people who never lived through the famine themselves. Scientists call this field epigenetics. It's important to say clearly, much of this research is still active and debated, and scientists are still working out exactly how strongly and how long these effects persist. But the core finding from the Dutch famine studies has been replicated enough times that it's widely treated as credible evidence. Extreme stress appears to leave chemical marks on gene expression, marks that may echo into the next generation. A separate and more established line of evidence points the same direction. Researchers studying children of Holocaust survivors, including work published by psychiatrist Rachel Yehuda, found altered stress hormone regulation in those children, even though they never personally experienced the trauma their parents survived. Two very different tragedies on two different continents, pointing toward the same unsettling pattern. Sit with that for a second. Your grandparents' hardest years may still be quietly writing instructions inside you, right now, in this exact moment. And it doesn't stop at inheritance. It's happening in you, fresh every single day. Picture your own heart, right now, reading this. Every time your ancient stress response fires, not for a predator, but for an overflowing inbox, cortisol floods your system exactly like it would for a real physical threat. Researchers now link that chronic activation to measurable long-term cardiovascular strain. Picture yourself alone, on open grassland tens of thousands of years ago, scanning the horizon at dusk, deciding in half a second whether that shape ahead is a rock or something worse. That exact decision-making machine is sitting behind your eyes right now, deciding to open that email. The tools changed completely. The operator never got the update. Thousands of years ago, a rustle in tall grass could mean death. The humans who survived weren't the calmest ones. They reacted first and thought later. Tonight, somewhere quiet, a notification buzzes. That same ancient reflex fires, right on schedule. Heart rate up, attention hijacked, over something that, on an honest scale, threatens nothing at all. No lions in your kitchen, no famine in your fridge, no rival tribe outside your door. That part's obvious. Here's what's not obvious. The alarm still fires exactly the same way, every time, because the system inside you still can't tell a real threat from a loud one. We built a world almost recognizable from the one our brains spent hundreds of thousands of years learning to survive, and quietly expected the wiring to keep up on its own. It hasn't, not fully, maybe not for a long while yet. So the next time you jerk awake for no reason, or feel your pulse spike over a text that just says, "We need to talk," pause before you spiral. That's not a glitch. That's not weakness. That's a few 100,000 years of hard-won survival, still doing its job a little too well for a world that stopped needing it to long before you ever showed up in it. You are not broken. You are simply the newest version of something ancient, still learning to live in a body built for a world that no longer exists.